Very good morning to all. In today's session, you're going to learn what is all about the marriageable economics, what are its branches, what are its types exactly. That is all about in today's session. How the major principles of marriageable economics to be applied practically or in reality. That is all about in today's session. So let's begin the manageable economics. What is manageable economics? So manageable economics is the overall study of economic thoughts, economic theories, its principles, its a major concepts which is mainly being used for a possible or optimal decision or in case of the manageable decision making, and that's called the manageable economics. Economics is a part of the manageable economics, or in other words I could say the manageable economics is a part of the economics, and such economics is mainly dependent upon the principles, it's dependent upon the major theoretical and the practical theories and its associated concept, which is mainly used for a business decision making and the management decision making, and that's called the manageable economics. In other words, we could say the manageable economics is also the application of various theories, principles, concepts of economics to get a better optimal decision in business. And that's called the manageable economics. It's not only all about such economics, it's not only all about money. It also shows an interrelationship between the wealth and finance. And that's the main reason to get that how you interrelate these two important terms in manageable economics. The application of mathematical and statistical tools will be used to get the optimum decision or optimal decisions in management or in business practices. That's called the manageable economics. So when we talk about the major applications of mathematical and statistical tool, when we talk about mathematical tools, we always talk about the economic models. We always talk about the theorems. That is Bayes' theorem. That is, we can talk about the statistical tools that is t-test, z-test, f-test, men whitening test, which always been used in coming out the best decisions for the management team or for the beneficial of the organization, and that's called the manageable economics. So it is, you can see, a one of the branch of economics. It's a one of the sub part of the economics, and without the manageable economics it's, you can say, incomplete. So that's called the manageable economics. So when we talk about the manageable economics, we always, one of the most important part is what are the applications of the mathematical and the statistical tools to take up the management decisions perfectly or accurately. So these are the applications of mathematical and statistical tools where and a proper manageable decision can be taken off. That is the economic theories, principles, concepts, models, I would say, and they apply these particular theories, principles, concepts, and models applied through the use of mathematical and statistical tools to reach out the manageable decision making, and that's called the manageable economics. So when we talk about economic theories, we talk about the theory of motivational, the theory of Z and Y consumers theory. We always talk about the psychological needs theory. We talk about the principles of economics, that is the want principle, needs principles, demand principles, supply principles, and the market equilibrium principles, and the various concepts of economics, the types of economics, microeconomics, We talk about the manageable economics, which is also the one of the most important part of the economics, the most important branch of the economics. So the concepts would be related to the individual equilibrium, market equilibrium, the various types of the competitions that exist in the market, and how these particular parameters will be applied through the use of mathematical statistical tool to reach out the best decisions for the organization, the best decisions for the organization, for the for the benefit of the organization, and that's called the manageable economics. So we talk about here that how the process would goes on in manageable economics. So the manageable decisions when we talk about, so we talk about the applications of economic concepts. So when we talk about the manageable decisions, the choice of a product, technology, the production, the price, promotional activities, so how these choices can be done? It can be done through following up the two type of process. The first one is the organization could apply the economic concepts, theorems, models, principles in decision making, or he could apply the mathematical or analytical tools or the statistical tools to make up the choices regarding the product or production method or the price or any other parameters which where the decisions needed, an optimal decision is needed. So these are the two parts where either you could use the applications of economic concepts, you can use the economic theorems, you can use the economic principles, you can use in a better for a better decisions, or you can use the mathematical, analytical, and the statistical. We talk about the logical reasoning tools, so which is also part of mathematics. So these are the two parts. So when you add together, then a perfect decisions could be come up for the organization to solve the management problems, to solve the management issues. So when we combine these two applications, the economic theories and the analytical and the mathematical and the statistical tools, then we talk about applications of economic concepts, theories, and analytical tool to find out the solutions for manageable problems. So that is the main reason. So when choices is related to anything, it would be product, technology, investment of a projects, price, advertising, promote other promotional activities or strategies, the price strategies. So when we talk about to how to take up a best decisions for the management, add these two applications. The first one is concepts, theories, and principles, and the second one is mathematical and statistical tool, which is in a very broad aspect we could say the analytical tool. So once you combine these two application together, you will get the exact optimal solution for the management problems, whether with respect to the problems related to production methods, price, and many more issues. Now we talk about the economics, we talk about the theories, we talk about the principles, we talk about the principle of trust, principle of true and fair, the principles of mutual interest, the principles of you can say asset pricing. So there are various principles that the economics deals for. The theories of economics that we talk about the consumers preference theory, we talk about the consumers motivational theories, the consumers Z and Y theories. There's a theories of economics. We talk about the theory of market equilibrium, the theory of the demand analysis. So that's called the theories of economics, which will apply to get the optimal solution with the use of the mathematical issues to get the optimal decision. So, what is decision making? It is a selection of the best alternative out of the various possible alternatives. That's called decision making. And automatically, the two particular major part are always being involved. That is risk and uncertainty. So when a particular management or a organization, the head of the organization always come up to a best alternative, there is always a risk and uncertainty involved in it, because it doesn't necessarily that whatever the best alternative always give a best results. So it always include risk and uncertainty. The next one is economics. So, what is economics all about? Economics, in other words, in a very simple term, is a queen of social science. So, economics is a social science. Why it's called a social science? Because it deals with the production, distribution, and the consumption of goods and services. It also deals with the four factors of production, that is land, labor, capital, and enterprise or organization, and along with that, technology. And that's why the economics is a social science. In other words, we could say it also studies a positive relationship between the unlimited bonds and limited resources which have an alternate uses. It means economics is a study of human behavior where a positive relationship between the unlimited bonds, or you can say limited resources which have an alternative uses, and how the society uses own limited resources. And if a particular researcher study upon it, that how, why? That's called economics. Economics is classified or is come up with the two Greek words. So when you add these two Greek words, it's all about economics. That is okos and nomos. Okos we talk about in other words house, and nomos we talk about the management. So it means the house management. You can say the Greek words called house management, it refers to a management of consumption, production, and distribution of goods and services to the ultimate consumers. And that's called economics. Then how the society would use such resources which are in limited in use or which have an alternate uses. So, according to the J.S. Mill, economics is a practical science of production and distribution of wealth. As I already told, that economics is not all about money; it's also all about the wealth and finance. How the people would manage such wealth and manage such money, and how they invest such money into the different you can say resources, and that's called economics. So when a researcher studies all about that how, why, the production related to the production, consumption, and distribution of wealth, that's called economics. So it is a study at how the people produce and spend the income. That is also the called simple words called economics. So economics is it's classified into two main categories. The first one is economic activity, which always exchange of products in for money, and economic problems. So when we talk about the economic problem, so economic problem is a logical choice between the resources which are in less in number and the unlimited bond. So it is very difficult. Every human being has unlimited bond, and it is very difficult for the individual to satisfy their unlimited bonds according to the period of time. And that's the main problem occurs for an individual, that how to make up a logical choice between the scarce resources, the limited resources, and the unlimited wants. So this is called the economic problem. This is one of the major economic problem of an individual, of an organization, where the resources are very limited, but the wants and needs are very infinite. So that would be very difficult and challenging to take up a logical choice between both of them. So economics is also to get the answers of all those basic questions of an economy, that what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce. So what to produce, that is whether a good or service, how to produce, in what ways, whether it could produce through the wholesalers, retailers, the different chain of the channels to that how to produce, to whom to produce. It would be the consumer, it would be the customer, it would be the retailer. So that is all about that is all about the economics and how to answer these questions. That's the study of economics. So economic, as I already told, economics is a social science that is concerned with the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. In other words, I could say the economics deals of how the society uses its limited resources. So, and how they satisfy their limited wants and needs. That is all about the study, and that's the economics study for. Economics has two main branches. The first one is micro, which always relate to the individual business unit, or you can say individual industrial unit. So that is called the micro, you can say, unit. We talk about the macroeconomics, we always talk about the group of industries, group of companies, and that's called microeconomics. We can talk about, we will not talk about in macro case individual demand. We always talk about the national market demand, a national income, and that's called macroeconomics. So microeconomics refers or deals with an individual business unit or a micro organization unit, and that's called microeconomics. We can talk about the microeconomics, individual demand, individual supply, right? So that's called microeconomics. So when we talk about macroeconomics, we talk about the unemployment, we talk about the poverty, we talk about the national income, we talk about the domestic gross domestic product. We can talk about the international trade. So that's called the microeconomics. So when we talk about anything, whether it's demand, supply, market, we talk about individuals or in the small units, we talk about microeconomics. So when we talk about the macro, we always talk about as a large, as a whole. So we talk about macroeconomics. So if you study any units, whether it's a group, whether it's industry, whether it's company, so as a whole, we talk about macroeconomics. But we talk about as an individual, we talk about micro. So, microeconomics is a study of a particular firm, particular households, individual prices, wages, income, any type of individual industry or particular industries. For example, sugar industry, textile industry. So, it's all about microeconomics. So some of the theories under microeconomics, that is theory of individual demand, market demand, theory of production and cost, theory of markets, price, theory of profits, etc. So when we talk about individual and market demand, we always talk about what is demand exactly. Demand is if a person or an individual is have a natural desire to buy, an ability to pay or willingness to pay for a specified price for that particular product which has desire to buy. That's called demand. So if a particular individual has a natural desire, is a willingness to pay and ability to pay a specified price for it, that's called demand. So that is called market demand, is a demand as a whole. So when you add all the individual demands, it becomes market demand. We talk about the production and cost. These two particular terms, it's related to each other. So when the cost would get increased, so definitely it would also influence the production. And market and price, so market is depends upon the price theory. So if the price fluctuates, market will get fluctuate either you can say slowly or either largely. We talk about the theory of profits. So we will learn all these particular theories in detail, but on a later stage. So it's a small description of these theories. So let's talk about the macroeconomics. The macroeconomics, it's not deal with the individual quantities, but it is an aggregate of all those quantities of demand, not limited with the individual income, but with limited to the national income only, which is one of the example of macroeconomics, because macroeconomic it's not deal with as an individually, it deals aggregately. So some of the theories which comes under macroeconomics: theory of total demand and employment, journal price level, theory of inflation, theory of international trade, theory of trade cycle, economic growth, economic development, and that's called the microeconomics. So this is the difference between the manageable economics and economics. So automatically that manageable economics is a branch of economics. So totally definitely both are different some in various aspects. So when we talk about economics, economics is a very comprehensive and wider scope. But manageable economics which have a very narrow and limited scope. So when we talk about economics, the micro and macro will always include in that, but when we talk about manageable economics, definitely macro and micro were involved in analysis to get the optimal decision, and that's called the manageable economics. When we talk about economics, it's both. It's normative and positive science. Normative, we always talk about to testify, to evaluate, which is always also based on ethical aspects. But when we talk about manageable economics deals with the normative science, which always based on the ethical consideration, the ethical statements, the which is used to testify or evaluate, which is not based on generalizing the facts only. When we talk about economics, we talk about the under economics, it's used to formulate the theories and principles. But manageable economic is to apply the theories and principles to get the best or optimal alternatives of the management issues or the business issues when it comes to the manageable economics. But when we talk about economics, we always talk about the general problems of the economy. But when we talk about the manageable economics, it's discusses the individual problem. That means discusses the individual manager's problems, the individual company or business unit problems, and accordingly the solution could be carried out. So this is a main difference between the economics and the manageable economics. When we talk about the nature of manageable economics, here we talk about the science and art of decision making. When we talk about the science, we talk about the, you can say, the production, distribution, and consumption of goods. But when we talk about the why, the economics is an art, because the art is always deals with the creativity. It deals with the architect's work. We deals with the creative work, cultural products, and literature. That's called art, and that's the main reason that why the economics is art, just because of the architecture, because of the cultural products, because of the artistic work and creativity. And that's why economics is also a science as well as art of decision making. That's very true that manageable economics includes both micro and macro. It study both micro and macro, but in terms of analysis only. So when there is an issue, when there is a problem in a business unit and a micro organization, then definitely, when in analyzing that issue, micro and macro will be used. When we talk about manageable, it is a normative science and always been positive in analysis. Normative science is always based on testify and evaluate, which is not based on generalizing facts, and definitely it always ethical. Let's talk about the next point. It is concerned with the application of theories and principles. Managerial economics is always based on the three main concepts: theories, principles, and the concept of economics. So whatever the theories which has been is defined in micro and macro, and whatever the principles which will involve according to the issues will be applied. It discusses individual problems. Of course, we talk about individual problems of the management, individual problems of all those aggregate staff of an organization. It is a dynamic in nature, not a statistic. Dynamic is always being used where each and every issues will be considered to get an optimal solution. We talk about the discuss the economic behavior of a firm. Definitely, we always talk about economic behavior. It means about the trend analysis, that how the price go up, what are the reasons behind it. So such kind of behavior, such kind of analysis will be discussed under manageable economics. It concentrates the optimum utilization of resources. So whatever the resources available related to any particular issues, there is the whole resources will be utilized to resolve that issue. So that's the nature of the manageable economics, which is both. It is micro and macro, includes normative science, application, concepts and principle will improve. It discusses the individual problems, is dynamic in nature, economic behavior. It also study, it concentrate the optimum utilization of resources as well. The next concept is scope of manageable economics. So these are the scope objectives of the firm. So obviously, what were the objectives of the firm? To maximize the profits of the firm, and of course, to increase the wealth of the organization as well, or in other words, to maximize the wealth of the organization or firm. That is also the objectives of a firm. The next one is demand analysis and forecasting. So when we talk about the demand analysis, we talk about the tools of demand. That is the elasticity of demand, price elasticity of demand, income elasticity of demand, gross elasticity of demand. We talk about advertising elasticity of demand. So definitely, accordingly, the demand could analyzed and forecast as well. Production and cost analysis, we always talk when we analyzing the problems related to production and cost, we always used up the tool about the marginal equilibrium, the partial equilibrium. So accordingly, where the cost of production will get involved and influence to each other, and accordingly these particular tools will get analyzed to get the optimum or possible solution of an issue related to production and cost. But when we talk about the pricing decision, we always talk about the pricing strategies. We always talk about the pricing theorems, where the decision could be taken up accurately related to pricing. We talk about the profit management. Definitely, when we talk about the profit management, is always being considered when the projects would involve the higher cost, or you can say in crores. Then, in that case, the manageable economics could be applied or will be used in applications for profit management. The next one is capital management. Of course, the manageable economics is also being used for how to manage the capital of the organization, and it could be managed through the various ratio analysis. We could manage the various cash flow and fund flow statements, the balance sheet. Accordingly, we could manage the capital. The next one is market structure. As we talk about the market structure, we talk about the market equilibrium, where you can say market demand and market supply would get equal. So how it would get equal and what parameters to be considered to get it equal, whether no profit and no loss would the situation could occur in the market or for the organization, that how it to be done. That's called the market structure. It could be done through the applications of the manageable economics. Next one is inflation and economic conditions. So when we talk about inflation and economic conditions, so it always fluctuate and influctuate among these two conditions, whether how the inflation would you can say harmful, or you can say influence the economic conditions in terms of income, national income, in terms of individual income, in terms of individual demand, in terms of individual supply. So inflation is a major, you can say a major factor which always influence the economic conditions when it comes to demand, supply, and it's come to price, promotion as well. So in that, when you study about the inflation and economic condition, the manageable economics applications will be used. Next one is manageable and decision making. That if you use anything to solve the solution, to get the optimal solution, what type of decision making to be considered? So decision making either on internal affairs, either on external affairs. Internal affairs, we always talk about internal environments. External affairs, we always talk about the external environment. So when we talk about internal, we talk about marketing, we talk about financing, we talk about human resources, we talk about the production, we talk about the distribution, we talk about the any you can say advertising problems. We talk about internal affairs, but when we talk about the external affairs, it always talk about the external environment, which consists of external factors such as pest related disease. We talk about the pest analysis, SWOT analysis. We talk about the market test analysis related decisions to be considered, and that's called the external environment. Decision making, it categorized into two parts, uncertainty and risk. So when we talk about risk, so it is a situation where always comes under uncertainty. Uncertainty is unpredictable. Anything could be happen. Nothing can be expected, we could say. It always a constant changes in the environment, either internally or externally, and that's called uncertainty. So uncertainties is refers to a situation which is unpredictable, which is unexpected. Any changes could be occur into a environment which is unplanned, whether internally or externally, and that's called uncertainty. When we talk about risk is a situation which comes under uncertainty, which is unpredicted. So it could be a business risk, it could be financial risk. So when we talk about business risk, we talk about the profits. Like if we sell some kind of product at a, like in other words, we could say that, for example, a company is expected to earn 200 crores for selling for getting a sold of its company products, but actually it's 100 crores to be earned by selling up their own products. So that means it is called a business risk. So what you expect and what actually you get it in real, that's called business risk. So these are the steps to construct economic models. So what is economic models? Economic models are those models which can be applied to solve the business problems or the management issues. And there is a step by step to be followed to reach up or to get the maximum, you can say, quantitative analytical tools, and to reach out the maximum or optimum results or decisions. So before to construct an economic model, it is very important to define the economic problem, whether the limited resources, how such resources to be utilized for the society, what alternative uses uh, could be there. So that is the called the problem. So first you define the problem related to financing, related to production, related to distribution, all that matters a lot. So when you define the problem, the second step is to formalize the hypothesis. What is hypothesis? Hypotheses are just in declarative or assumed statements which is being used to testify or to evaluate whether it's true or false. So hypothesis you need to formulate, for example, whether the unlimited bonds you can say could be fulfilled or not. This is a declarative statement, and accordingly you can collect the data from the people, to collect the data from the respondents. So once you collect the data, now the next step is the manageable economics, where the analysis of data to be used. That is the basic principles of the economics, and the quantitative means mathematical statistical tools will be used to analyze that data which has been collected by the researcher. So once the data has been analyzed, then you can test the hypothesis. For example, I already making a statement that whether the unlimited bonds would can be fulfilled or not. This is a hypothesis statement. So after collecting the data, after analyzing the data, now I will test this statement that whether the unlimited bonds could be satisfied or not. So after analyzing the data, the result will came up no. The answer is no. No unlimited bonds could be fulfilled because limit bonds are should be limited, and ability to fulfill that by an individual or by a common man only. So that's why the testing of hypothesis, the result of the hypothesis is no. So once the testing of hypothesis, then you need to evaluate the results. So once you evaluate the results, whether the results are accurate after getting the data collected and analyzing. So definitely once the evaluate the results or conclude the results, you just make a conclusion or conclude on to take up a optimal decision, and that's called the economic model. And this is a way the economic model could construct to solve any business or management issues. So this is a way to formulate or to construct a model and accordingly solve the problem. And this economic model is followed in all the finance companies, in all the industries where such problems exist, and this model will be applied to solve the problem, to reach out the exact and optimal decisions. So these are the basic principles of manageable economics. The first one is opportunity cost of principle, marginalism principle, equimarginalism principle, incremental principle, and the time perspective principle, and the discounting principles. So when we talk about the opportunity cost principle, it refers the cost which is being sacrificed to get an additional cost or to get an additional benefit. That's called the opportunity cost. So if you have to gain some more bags of rice, you have to sacrifice anything or any other product to reach out or to gain that particular rice of a bag of rice, some extra in quantity. So that's called the opportunity cost. So if you want to gain something more, you have to sacrifice something. So that's a rule of the opportunity cost. So let's begin one by one. So before decision, what decision, how to take a decision? It could be it could be take a decision by using the economic model. What is economic model exactly? It is a structural and the scientific method of constructing and developing a solution, which is I already told you that if any researcher want to reach out a decision, he or she has to construct the economic model by following a scientific method or this developing a economic model through the various steps using the concepts, using the theorems, using the principles, using the mathematical and statistical tool that's called economic model. Now we talk about the principles of manageable economics. The first one is opportunity cost principles. So as the rule says, its choice involves sacrifice. If you want to make a choice of one choice, you have to sacrifice the second choice. If you want a second choice, you have to sacrifice your first choice, and that's called opportunity cost. So if you want to gain something more quantities of a goods, then you have to sacrifice the extra quantities of another good. So that's called the opportunity cost. The cost involved with the sacrifice only. It is the cost of the next best opportunity which is lost, which will be called an opportunity cost. So if you sacrifice something more to get the best opportunity which is being lost, it's called the opportunity cost. So if we talk about 100 rupees can be used for purchasing a book or eating a pizza corner or purchasing a stationery. So if I have to make a choice whether I could purchase a book, whether I could eat a pizza in 100 rupees, whether I purchase a stationery, so it's my choice. So the choice is purchasing a book, which also includes the cost of eating pizza. So as I told, if I out of these three options or choices, I have choose purchasing a book, which also include eating a pizza also, which is a best opportunity when we talk about in economics or in management, and that's called the opportunity cost principle. So if you want to gain something, you have to sacrifice something, as we sacrificed purchasing of stationery. And in 100 rupees, if you get the best opportunity in both, you purchase the book, you eat the pizza, that's called the opportunity cost principle. Now, in through diagrammatically, when we talk about the opportunity cost, you have to gain something, that you have to reduce something. So, if you want to gain an optimum quantities, then of course, definitely you have to reduce your price. And accordingly, in opportunity cost principle, there is the particular concept will be shown in the form of production possibility curve. Production possibility curve is a curve which shows an inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demanded of a particular product to an ultimate consumers. So if the quantity would get increased, so definitely the price would get increased from A to C1. If we talk about A, C to C1 and D to D1. What is D to D1? Here we talk about the quantity demanded, and here C to C1 we talk about the you can say the choices on AFCON. In other words, we could say the price. So if your choices has been sacrificed just to increase the demand, your curve would be the PPC curve, production possibility curve. It means if your choices has been sacrificed just due to increment of in the demand of a particular product or a particular, you can say similar products or a different products, and that's called the production possibility curve. So a production possibility curve will be the elastic inverse elastic curve, which is called a production possibility curve. In other words, it is called an inward curve That is called the production possibility curve. Now the next principle is equal marginalism principle. When we talk about equally marginalism principle, we always talk about how to allocate the limited resources on different alternative uses, which should be equally distributed. What is equally? Equal means equal. What is marginalism? We always talk about that how the limited resources will be allocated, you can see on different alternative uses, but it should be equally distributed, and that principle is called equally marginalism principle. So this is the principle which has been denoted. We talk about the marginal price if we talk of A. If we talk of A particular resources, if the marginal product of B particular resource, if the marginal product of C particular resource, if the marginal product of D, it should be equal. If you are distributing the resources to an alternate use of A, then alternate use of B, then alternate use of C, then alternate use of D, it should be equally distributed. If we talk about the choices, if we talk about the choices of B, if we talk about the choice of C, D, so whatever the choices to be made up for all these particular resources which having an alternative uses, limited resources, it should be equally distributed. And that's called equally marginalism principle. So when we talk about the next principle, that is incremental principle, that is that it gives them an idea to increase the production not only for one or more product, but it could be any quantity until the profit could exist. That's called incremental principle. So incremental means to increase not only the production but also the exact quantities until the profit could exist, and that's called the incremental principle. So according to principle, profit can be existing either to increase the sale or either to increase the total revenue or to decrease the total cost. Total cost refers to a combination of fixed cost and variable cost. Fixed costs are those costs where there is no changes, where the cost would remain the same, where there is a changes in the production. Variable cost, where the cost would get changed, where the production of the goods would get changed, and that's called the variable cost. So according to this principle, profit could exist if you these things would apply: increase the sale, increase the total revenue, and decrease the total cost. And that is a decision rule. If the total cost is less than the total revenue, or the total cost is equal to total revenue, if the total cost is greater than the total revenue, that means it's a principle or a decision rule of incremental principle. Next one is marginalism principle. Here we are talking about the marginal cost, marginal profit or benefit. So before I come to define marginalism principle, you need to understand what is marginal cost and marginal revenue. Marginal cost is a cost which incurred to produce the next or one more unit. So if we talk about the marginal cost, if any researcher wants to produce the one more unit or the next unit, and whatever the cost involved in producing the more units, in producing the next units, is called the marginal cost. But when we talk about the marginal revenue, it's a benefit. It's a, you can see the increment that a particular individual seller would get on producing one more unit or the next unit, and that's called the marginal revenue. So if a particular seller produce the one more unit or the next unit, and whatever the cost involved in that, in producing that next or one more unit, it's called marginal cost. So it marginal revenue is an increment benefit where a seller gets that gets that benefit by producing one more or next unit, that is marginal revenue. So it could be the cost could be less, the benefit could be more. If the cost would be more, the benefit would be less. So there is an inverse relationship between the cost and the benefit as well. So it could not be equal. So marginalism principle is always being a total cost. The marginal cost will be calculated from the total cost only and the total revenue. So marginal cost is related to the total cost of total cost of the next unit minus the total cost of the previous unit, and that's called the marginal cost. So it's a difference between the total cost of a next unit and the total cost of the last unit, and that's called the marginal cost. Marginal revenue is the total revenue of the next unit and the total revenue of the last unit, and that's called the marginal revenue. And what was the decision? That marginal revenue should be more than the marginal cost. The marginal revenue should be equal to the marginal cost, and the marginal revenue is less than the marginal cost. When these particular rules will be applied or decision rules will be applied, and that's called the marginalism principle. So before you come to such principle, you first understand what is marginal cost and marginal profit. Then you can understand the mathematical principle, which is very easy to understand. Why? Because if the concept and would easy to understand. So marginalism principle or its mathematical formula will be based on the concepts of marginal cost and the marginal revenue. The next one is time perspective principle. So according to this principle, all the decisions will be taken on the two particular time period, short term and the long term time period, depending upon the decision's characteristics. Each decision should be made up in the long run basis on long short term basis. And when we talk about the short term decision, the long run decision will get changed. So automatically, both the decision in respective of their time differs, and it doesn't necessarily. So whatever a decision has been taken in the short run, the same decision will be taken for the long run as well. Definitely it will get changed as depending upon the issues and the situations of the market, and accordingly the decision could be taken in respective of their time period, at the short run or long run. So when we talk about discounting factor, which is one of the most important topic, according to this principle, if the decision, discounting principle stands for if the decision affects the cost and revenues in the long run, all those cost and revenue must be discounted to present values before valid comparison of alternatives is possible. This is one of the major rule of this principle. If a decision affect cost and revenue in the long run, all those costs, what are all those costs means? Total cost and the marginal cost. Revenue, marginal revenue and the total revenue must be discounted. That means must be adjustable to present value before making any valid comparison of an alternatives is possible. This is why it is essential, because a rupee worth of value at a future date is not a worth of a rupee today. Definitely. So whatever the predictions for the future in case of rupee value, it doesn't matter. You can say it's not even worthful. Doesn't matter of a rupee, of a value of a rupee of today. So money actually has time value. Definitely, it's very true. It very you can say well said that money actually has time value, because when we talk about the value of a rupee in for the future, it always differs the value as compared to the value of rupee at present. So that is called the discounting principle, where the decision could be taken according to the cost and revenues, whether total revenue and marginal revenue in the long run only. So it will be discounted, adjusted to present values before valid comparison, before doing any valid comparison of all those alternatives, whichever wherever it's possible. Discounting principle, there is a mathematical formula that could be understood as the face value is equal to the face value is the today value we can talk about, or we can based on the future value. So FV is a, in other words, we can solve future value, P is a present value into 1 plus R. R is a, you can say, discount rate. T is a time between the future value and the present value. And in other words, we could say the present value is equal to future value, or face value is by 1 plus R into T. So where FV is a future value, PV is a present value, R is a discounted interest rate, T is the time between the future value and the present value. So this is a mathematical formula where you can say the calculations, mathematical calculation could be done, and this is the discounting principles mathematically being used. Now we talk about the next, the most important point, that is quantitative techniques used in manageable economics. We talk about the variables. Variables, it would be the direct variable, indirect variable. We talk about the fixed variable. So these are the variables to be used accordingly in economics. Functions, it would be the demand function, it would be the supply function, it would be the market function, it would be the national income function. So these are the functions to be used here. The next one is scheduled. Schedule, we talk about the time analysis, we talk about the trend analysis, when we talk about the monthly analysis or yearly analysis, all that. We talk about the scheduling, time scheduling techniques under manageable economics. We talk about the next one is graphs. So whatever the data has been collected, it should be shown in the graph, whether it would be the bar diagram, it would be the pie diagrams, it would be the histograms, it would be in the tabulations as well. So that's called the graph. So graph is a graphical representation of a particular variable in respective of their data. Derivatives, if we talk about the fluctuations upon of the inflation rate, deflation rate, higher inflation rates. So that is called derivatives. Here, derivatives, we talk about the market derivatives, where the fluctuations in the market could occur, and how you study that fluctuation, how you study that changes. In that perspective, you can say derivative theorems, or you can say models would be used to tackle or to get the solutions of such issues which exist in the market when it comes to the fluctuations or in the prices, in the demand, in the supply, etc. Next one is differentiation. When we talk about differentiation, here we talk about the charging a different prices to different consumers. This is also a differentiation strategy which has been applied in the market, which is a very, you can say, very you can say very highly impactful strategy in the market, and very, you can say, a respectful policy towards the pricing strategy, towards the promotional strategy as well. So such problems or issue could be used through the differentiational theorems, where, or you can say in differentiation, which is a mathematical tool where it comes to the pricing or cost to measure. Next one is integration, which is one of the most important mathematical tool, where the when it comes to the pricing, when it comes to the cost, when it comes to the revenues, when it comes to the any other profit factor, the integration techniques will be used in terms of measuring all the particular following parameters, whether it's pricing, whether it cost, whether it's revenue, whether the other profit parameter, the integration technique will be used, but according to according to the business issue or management issue to consider. So this is the quantitative techniques which is used in manageable economics. The variables, it could be any variable, independent, independent variables, direct or indirect variable, fixed variables. So there are the various parameters. It could be income, it could be price, it could be technology. They're all variables. So it used accordingly whether it influence the particular factors or not. Functions is a demand function, supply functions, which is being used to measure the exact demand in the market or supply in the market. Schedules, we always talk about the time series analysis. We always talk about the time scheduling. Graphs as well, derivatives as well, differentiation, where the mathematical integration and tools will be used. How to, you can say, measure the future value, how to measure the present value. Discounting principle has been given using up the discount interest rate and the time between the future value and the present value. So that's it for today, and thank you so much, and namaste to all.